my name is Megan Hassing, and I chose the book by Donalyn Miller called The Book Whisperer, Awakening the Inner Reader in Every Child. First of all, I really enjoyed this book because unlike other books written by professionals, Donalyn Miller isn't preachy and she uses anecdotes, so it feels like a conversation instead of just a fact sheet of information. So it was an enjoyable read. First of all, some context information. Donalyn Miller is an English teacher, so she has a lot of background in the field she's talking about, and she uses a lot of her personal experiences to ground the methods that she has come up with. So first of all, Miller starts the book by telling us how passionate she is about reading, which is a good basis for writing a book about awakening the inner reader in every child, right? She explains that when she was a first-year teacher, she was really excited to teach a book to the whole class. And she had done all this prep work, prepared all these activities to go along with the book. She felt really prepared. And yet, when she taught the book in the class, she found that the students were not really engaged in the book and didn't seem very motivated. And so she began to wonder why that is and what she could do to fix that. So, before we go into that, Miller explains that there are 3 types of readers. 1, developing readers. 2, dormant readers. And 3, underground readers. Developing readers are typically classified as struggling readers, but Miller likes to use more positive language, so she calls them developing readers. These are the ones who read below grade level, okay? Dormant readers are those who can successfully read at their own level. However, they do not really read for fun. They read to get by in school, but they don't necessarily enjoy it. Finally, there are underground readers. And these are the students who enjoy reading. However, when a novel is taught to the whole class, they are usually not challenged or motivated to read because it's either not at their level, it's below their level, or it's not something they're really interested in, so they'd prefer to just be reading their own book. So for each of these readers, Miller suggests one simple solution: let them read. I know, crazy, right? However, it's not just reading, it's reading their own books. So reading books that they have chosen is the main solution. So instead of teaching a novel to the whole class, like Animal Farm, she lets each student choose the book that they would like to read. Whether it's Diary of a Wimpy Kid or Harry Potter, they can read what they want to. She found that teaching a novel to the whole class is problematic because every student has a different reading level and different interests, and one novel does not cover that. Also, she found that when teachers teach a novel to the whole class, they put in all these extra activities like worksheets and craft projects that don't really add to the book and take away time from the reading. And that leads to another point that Miller makes, is that when teachers teach a book to the whole class, it takes a really long time. You might spend like a month on one book, and that's a month of maybe not even reading the whole time. You might just be going over vocabulary words and worksheets that are just filling up all this time, as I said before. And Miller believes that kids should be reading as much as possible, finding as much time in class to read. So when you have to teach the whole class one book, it takes away from actual reading time. And Miller has found some really creative ways to carve out time in class for reading. For example, I'm sure we've all experienced classroom interruptions like the principal calling on the phone or picture day. Well, Miller suggests that we read during this time. That students should just be reading while we have these interruptions. So she has trained her class to pull out a book whenever she has to take a phone call. And she's trained them to bring a book to picture day, so whenever they're done taking their picture, they just go sit down on a bench and start reading, which I really love because it emphasizes that reading can be done anytime, any place, right? One other thing that Miller does is that she requires her students to read 40 books a school year. Now, Miller teaches 6th and 7th graders for the most part. So when you tell a student to read 40 books in a year, it sounds pretty scary to them. But she ensures readers and students alike that this is very possible. In fact, some students go above and beyond this number. So she explains why she came up with this number. She says that the high challenge of reading 40 books comes with high rewards. It ensures that students are reading the whole school year instead of a really small goal that students can easily achieve within a few months, like 10 books. 40 books ensures that they have to continue reading throughout the school year. Also, even if students fall flat of that goal, they still might reach a really good number. So even though the goal is 40 books, if a student only reads 20 books, that could still be a really high number for them. That might be double the number of books they had read their entire life. So this challenge boosts students' confidence in their reading levels because they're reading more than they've ever done before. Another thing that Miller encourages is for teachers to model their own passion of reading to their students, because if teachers don't show that they are motivated to read, how are students supposed to be motivated? So personally, this book is significant to me because it provides a lot of thought-provoking questions. I never really thought about why we teach or why we shouldn't teach a novel to the whole class. I just figured that's what we do, and that's just kind of how things have always been done. However, she got my wheels spinning, and I realized that, yeah, we should challenge this norm. This isn't really fitting our students. One thing that Miller repeats again and again that I want to make a motto for my own teaching is that we should teach the reader, not the book. So when we teach a whole classroom novel, we're just teaching a book, and we're not addressing the needs of each individual reader. And I think that's a really good motto to live by. Teach the reader, not the book. Okay, so keep that in mind. This is also significant to me because I'm a passionate reader myself, and I didn't consider how teaching one book to a class of 20-some students could demotivate students to read. I didn't realize that even though I might be really passionate about Animal Farm or Jane Eyre, whatever the book is, that students might not click with that book. They might not be interested in class struggles or weird politics that they don't quite understand. And I didn't think about the implications that could have on them. That even if they understand the book and all the comprehension that goes along with it and the vocabulary, it might not encourage them to keep reading. And the main goal that Miller wants in her classroom is to create lifelong readers. And so when we teach a whole book to the whole class, we're not teaching lifelong learners or readers. We're just teaching a book that they'll probably try to avoid in the future, right? So that was really thought-provoking for me. Professionally, this is significant because it goes against the grain of what teachers have done, what they've always done. We teach a book, we do worksheets, we do an assessment, and then we're done. We move on to something else. And we don't really connect to the book, the students don't really connect to the book, and this is significant because it shows that we need to adapt our teaching to the needs of our students. So even if that comes with new challenges, new ways to assess students, we need to be adapting with our students as the culture adapts. And Honestly, this book was written in 2009, and you know, it's aged a little bit, but quite frankly, the lessons that Miller is talking about are applicable anytime, anywhere. I think they were applicable in the early 2000s as they are now, because that's the main point of an English teacher, is to try to get students to read and to want to read. And so we need to rethink how we are motivating them, because as a profession, we are not just, you know, teaching Animal Farm. We're not just teaching a book. We are teaching the reader, and we need to remember that in the back of our mind always. So I believe that is really important for us to consider these things. Another thing that Miller brings up is that we are taking out time in the classroom for reading. Like, we're taking out all this extra time that could be used reading, and we need to rethink that time that we're using. So she really states that we need to rethink the activities that we're doing in class. Are they actually meaningful to the students? Are they actually going to encourage them to keep reading? Are they going to be reading-based activities or writing-based activities? Or are they just filler activities? So that is one thing that that teachers should really keep in mind when thinking about the standards and the students' needs and the students' goals, is what does this activity do for them, right? So is this just going to waste time and give them something to do? Or could they be reading instead? Because that's one thing that Miller emphasizes a lot throughout the book, is that if you need time to fill it with reading. That's the one thing that will improve test scores and improve their motivation and make sure that they become lifelong readers, is just reading. It's as simple as that. Okay? So, I have a couple questions to pose to you. 1, how can non-English language arts teachers motivate readers? How could you use what Miller describes in her book, or what I've talked to you about, in math classes or social studies? I know that might be a little hard because it's mostly about reading, but I think there are other lessons to be taken from this that are applicable to other fields. Especially the time part. Are we filling time with activities just for the sake of activities, or are they meaningful? Okay, so that's one thing. How can non-English language arts teachers motivate readers? Okay, that's my first question. My second question is, why have we as a culture taught reading as a skill and not as a gift? Because reading is a gift. It can take us all over the world right from our spot, and it can share new perspectives, and it can help us feel connected to other people in the world, even when we are at our most lonely. So why don't we emphasize that reading can be a gift? Why do we teach it as a skill, just something that we can use in college or at our jobs? Why don't we teach it as a lifelong hobby that we can be benefiting from in other more internal ways? Okay, so that's my second question. Why have we, as a culture, taught reading as a skill and not as an enjoyable gift? Okay, so thank you for listening to my book talk today. I highly recommend reading Donna Lynn Miller's The Book Whisperer. Even if you are not an English teacher, maybe you just really like reading, or you want to rethink some things in your classroom, I would recommend this book. Thank you for listening. My name is Megan Hassing. Enjoy your day.